Hello, everybody. Welcome to my mini astrological coffee talk with Eric. And tonight, 2 months ago, we did his father, RIP, and both gone too soon. We did Bruce Lee. And tonight we're doing Brandon Lee. Died at the age of 28 on the set of The Crow. He was engaged, had no children, to I think actress Elizabeth Hutton. I believe that was her name. But he is a Capricorn rising, Aquarius Sun and Moon. Very karmic energies and interesting placements in the chart. We're going to get into it. And, like his father, he was into the movies and into the kung fu and karate, and just really fascinating. They're both still survived by the sister and the mother, so they're still here. And gosh, with all that they went through, pretty strong ladies. But let's see what Mr. Brandon Lee, the Aquarius Sun and Moon. Now, I will tell you, right off the bat, here is Mr. Brandon Lee, born in Oakland, California. He's the Aquarius. There's his stuff. Now, what's really interesting about Brandon, his chart ruler, Saturn, because he's a Capricorn rising, right? It's in the third house, okay? And that's where his Chiron moon is. So there's something very karmic, and it's in Pisces. And this kind of gave me chills, because peep this. I want to show you this right off the bat. As I store things in my brain, I want to get to it right away so I don't forget. He died at 28. That's the fifth house annual perfection, which is creativity, right? Film, acting, right? Jupiter Taurus, he's doing his thing on The Crow. But his father dies when he is 8. Okay. And so what's interesting, that's the ninth house annual perfection, where we have Mars, Pluto, Uranus. So right off the bat, this is your father's teachings, wisdom, beliefs, philosophies, foreign lands. Now, I know there were time periods where Brandon, probably the whole family, would go back and forth from California to China when Bruce would be gone for a long time. Remember, we saw in his chart, he was, obviously was, over there working on a film and having an affair, and that's when he died. But this speaks to like leaving California and going. And remember, between 63 and 68, he's born in 65, Uranus Pluto conjunction. These are extremely dynamic healers. But with this being the annual perfection year when his father died, Mars, this can show like like a weapon or adversary to the father. But what's important is that you always look at the opposite house to kind of tell the story, even for the annual perfection year. And that's Saturn in the Chiron wound. And peep this, the Chiron wound, you can round up. So 16 would go to 17 years old, or 1 plus 6 is 7, but you'd round it up to 8 years old. That's the Chiron wound. And Pisces is film. So it's like almost karmic, right? That I think like his father was killed. He was doing dubbing work when he had those severe headaches and died on working on the movie in China. It may have been The Game of Death. I think he was doing voiceover stuff. But that's just something that stood out, the sort of Saturn and the Chiron and Pisces, sort of that connection to the father. Now, with the Aquarius Sun and Moon, the one thing that I thought was fascinating about this is that they're going, like, he's got karmic debt to pay off to both parents. The second house is our family savings, assets, our food, our speech, how we earn money, our value, self-worth, intuition, five senses, things you may collect. But with the Aquarius Sun and Moon, there's like karmic debt to pay off. But remember, Aquarius is detached. So it's like separating him from his family, right? but also separating him from his father. So kind of both kind of played out. The father dies first, then he dies. But it's just kind of interesting. He was engaged and going to get married, and I didn't get to check what sign she was, but he had no kids. But I just think that this is interesting because with the Ceres here, it feels like because the Ceres is closer to the sun, that there was this like his soul knew that there would be this detachment from the father. You know what I mean? And what's ironic, doing the research for this, part of this speaks to living a long life. And I feel like he would have if they did not do what they did, because that, I don't know if that was necessarily an accident. Okay. So let's start off with the Capricorn rising. You know, with the Lilith there, he's going to experience some sort of jealousy and envy, men and women kind of hitting on him in random places, but people rejecting him. You know, maybe he's coming in and he's all like, I'm Mr. Kung Fu Karate, I'm Bruce Lee's son, right? Maybe his discipline, people could be jealous, envious, a little hateration. That can happen in a big way with Lilith dealing with your physical appearance, your aura, and your outer mask. And Brandon Lee, he had a big aura. I don't know if you guys saw his films. I think it was something Rivals got him to be big. Maybe his third or fourth film. He only did, I think, six feature films and two TV movies. The first one was Kung Fu in '86. So, and then he had another one that year, Legend of something. But what does that show you? 21 is the 10th house. Even though the midheaven's here, this is workplace, work environment, right? So, Libra, he's in doing this kung fu movie, right? And doing his thing there. But with the Scorpio midheaven, 11th house, we're getting into Neptune. This is showing you Neptune midheaven, right? That was his career, the film. He was involved in the film industry, and this is in a conjunction. So that's kind of interesting too, in terms of that. But kind of literal, not the Scorpio's literal death, right? It's more metaphorical, allegorical, but it's like a death and rebirth, but it's a transformation. But he literally, I mean, when you're looking for markers of death, you can see Mars, you can see Saturn, sometimes, Neptune, Pluto, different things. You can sometimes even see things with Jupiter, because Jupiter can expand the negative and the positive. Never forget that about Jupiter. So even when it goes to Leo, it can, on June 30th, it can expand, right? The ego or the arrogance or the self-expression or creativity, So wherever Jupiter goes, it's good, mostly good, but there can be expansive energy too, and expand anything. I wonder if mom was not that warm and fuzzy. That's a thing happens with the Aquarius moon and the Ceres. It's kind of like a double entendre, right? But this would tell you that Brandon would be pretty unique, pretty different, someone who's innovative, futuristic, think outside the box. That crow was really going to be, obviously it came out and it was a pretty good movie, and he got to film a good portion of it, and then they had to replace him for like the last, little bit of scenes. But he, like his father, it seemed like Brandon Lee was well on his way to, being well received and becoming like a superstar that Jackie Chan then soon filled in and became. But Brandon Lee, was definitely following in his father's footsteps. Now, when you think about your communications, hands, skills, self-efforts, Saturn and Pisces, this is interesting because um, you know, I don't know if you guys saw the episode the other night with Anjali and I, but it was really fascinating. But she talked about that literally from our perspective here on Earth, if you looked up at the telescopes, that it looks like it appears as if Saturn's rings are dissolving when it's in Pisces. And I was like, wow, that's so crazy. And I looked it up and it's like a real thing. And you're just like, that's crazy. But this makes me think of, the relationship that there would be some karma or the relationship would be restricted, dissolving. And I say this with the younger sibling because this is all, there's a lot of things speaking to his death or him dying, and so that's one thing there. Um, but when you're looking at his fourth house with the Aries, you know, definitely active combat, fighting at home. He learned that at home. He was probably encouraged to focus and concentrate on it, and he was probably wanting to honor the father um, after Bruce passed away. The Aries is going to definitely be a part of the sports and athletic and the martial artists. So it's in the lineage, even though this is more the mother's lineage, but still things that were taught growing up in the home. If you think of the third house, right, all your education is third, fourth, and fifth. You know what I mean? And so whether you separate it, like I like to do, the third house more elementary, fourth more middle school, fifth house high school, college. Okay. And so with the Jupiter Taurus, Brandon was very creative and artistic. Okay. And so that gets into the martial arts, but also, being, someone who is being the artist, the actor, right? And he definitely had that. Now, I don't know the connection except that the Jupiter opposite the Neptune, because that's the fifth house annual perfection when he died at 28. Um, I don't I don't see astrologically, we would have to look at the transits because I don't see just in this opposition Jupiter opposing Neptune that it would, speak to like dying, from anything like that. And most times, just so you guys know, no psychic or astrologer should ever predict death. And you mostly don't see those things in the natal chart. It's always going to be in the transit. But the Jupiter opposite the Neptune could speak about sometimes some of his ideologies and beliefs and philosophies were going against what he was asked to do on the movies or the film sets, in terms of things for his career. And so I don't know if that could have played out because, I've worked on many film sets and we've had, even in my own film that I did, we had a gun wrangler and, everybody is so careful, you know what I mean? And there's really no live ammunition on the set. So something went wrong for there to be, for him to even be able to get shot. Like I just can't fathom that. The same thing with the Alec Baldwin thing, which I don't even want to get into that, but that was really terrible. Oh, let me check. Murray, did you leave? Do I need to go get you? Or are you still here? She's still on her phone? Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm still here on the phone,
Okay,
Eric.
okay.
So
All right. Yeah.
I'll let you know when I
Okay.
switch over.
All right. That sounds good. I just don't want to forget about you. Now,
Thank you.
with the sixth house, right, we're seeing that so I gotta move this up here. With the sixth house, we're seeing the not only the Gemini energy, but the North Node. And so this is really what? I mean, literally, obviously the North Node, you don't recognize it till around 30, it doesn't mature between 42 and 48, but he was moving towards it kind of early on, right? In terms of his work was his communication hands, but also his speech, right? His skills, self-efforts, doing the karate, doing the kung fu. So that's very North Node Gemini. And, that's really fascinating to me in terms of just, what he was doing. And I feel as if he did, like his father did do dubbing for some of his films that may have come out in China. So, I don't know the detail of that, but I feel like he did. And that would even speak to the Gemini North Node, which can be a North Node can be your mission, purpose, destiny, illusion. It's consuming, it's the dragon's head. So it wants to eat and eat. And it's like looking for more and more. It's never really satisfied, so but it can be kind of weird and unusual things. And you guys know the nodes of fate, North Node, South Node, are very karmic. They're really like the sun. They're malefics. The sun's a mild malefic, right? That's what I'm saying. The sun could like burn this moon in Ceres, so burn him being nurtured and cared for, and burn, this house, which is one of the reasons why, in one way he could have, if the moon wasn't here, maybe he would have had that long life. But with the sun and Ceres and the moon, I felt like it was like burning his connection to, the family. So that's kind of fascinating there. Now, when we're looking at his seventh house of Cancer, right, the house rulership, we'll be talking about in my astrology class, right? This is in the second house of family. So this kind of speaks to that, like his wife and getting married would have been very important to him, right? And that she may have been from a foreign culture, Aquarius Moon, and Cancer in the seventh house. And I believe she was European, Elizabeth Hutton. I didn't Google her, but he was mixed, you know, obviously, but still, different ethnicities and cultures. When you have the Orcus here, it's about investigating and researching deeply. And then obviously, Dog Star Sirius. It'd be ironic if she was actually a Cancer. That would actually be kind of wild, you know. When you're looking at Brandon Lee's eighth house, the one thing is that because of the sun and the moon opposing the eighth, he could have received an inheritance, and most likely he did, but went to the mom first before the kids because they were young when Bruce died. So, but this is one of the things that, having that sun in eighth house, I mean, the second house opposing the eighth, but it's the ruler of the eighth. You see that, Leo? Okay. That would show, one, that Leos would be attracted to him. He could be a little detached from his in-laws. They could be in entertainment or politics. I don't know if now this Elizabeth Hutton, I don't know if she was like Timothy Hutton's daughter or something like that. I mean, who knows, right? The actor Timothy Hutton, I didn't check that, but that just came to my mind because of seeing the Leo here. You see what I'm saying? Entertainment or politician. But you got different things: the Regulus, the Vertex, Isis is trans Pluto, Maki Maki. But the main thing is that because it's the ruler of the eighth and the second, it could show that he could receive that inheritance. But we know that, he did, but it was really kind of more given to the mom. And I wonder if there would have been something if he did have a kid that would have been left to his wife and the kid. Who knows? Okay.
Elizabeth is Aquarius, February 9th.
Okay.
Ooh,
It's Aquarius.
wow. That's something. Because remember, you guys, what? The moon is your family that you create too. Oh, that's sad. Thank you, guys. Yeah. Oh, no. It's interesting how these charts can talk to us in a way from the other side. When you look at this ninth house, as we talked about, the Virgo, Mars in Virgo, very strategic. And this is really good for the martial arts because Mars in Virgo is very heavy mental. They could be disciplined mentally, but this could also show, because your father's teachings, that the father could have a lot of scrapes, bruises, cuts, right? And obviously, he did as a, kung fu artist and a fighter and stuff like that. But then this is like that again, not the literal, but the metaphorical, like the Scorpio, right? Pluto and Mars, this is like transformation, death and rebirth in his ninth house. The one thing that's interesting is that, when I look at this energy here and then the Neptune Scorpio, like Brandon Lee, like he was a martial artist, but like I think he was moving energies. You know what I mean? Like he could have been a Reiki master or something. You know what I mean? Like he was definitely he had some spiritual powers. I think that there's something in the lineage. I think Bruce and Brandon definitely. I mean, we know how amazing Bruce Lee was, but I think Brandon was on his way to really following in the father's footsteps. And a lot of times, you guys, just so you know, this happens a lot. When the sun is in the second house, the person or the client, right, Brandon in this case, they would want to follow the sun, right? Follow in their father's footsteps for their second house earning. They would have similar values, you know? And so that definitely was the case. Now she wasn't Timothy Hutton's daughter. You don't see that, I'm sure, but she was an Aquarius.
Oh,
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I think they said she was an actress, and they were after the movie was done filming, they were gonna set the date and for their marriage. So he was well on his way to getting married. So that's
Eric,
yeah.
didn't see Dragon yet, did you?
I did see Dragon, but it was years ago, and I don't remember it. Why? What did they say?
No, because it's some kind of curse that was passed down from father to son.
Yes, 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 yes.
So,
God, it was so deep. I forgot what they said about it. It was
yeah, and I don't know. I think Bruce was trying to break the curse. I think it was metaphorical. I'm not sure if it,
yeah. Well, that's what it feels like with this Aquarius energy, like this karmic debt. But then this Mars, Pluto, Uranus, it almost feels like, right, that like think about Pluto and Uranus and the Mars, like in the father's teachings, that like he had to deal with like his father's karma or something,
right.
and then even the Saturn and Pisces, both karma in the film,
Hmm.
and dealing with, and that's what makes me think about the Pisces is film, but it's also deception. Because
Mm,
I feel as if, even though with Bruce it was headaches, remember he was at the studio doing voiceovers when he first started to suffer them, and then that woman um, was involved, with the I don't know if she was involved with the film industry down there or whatever, but there was something fishy. And then Brandon too on a film set. So was the curse? I felt like they said there was something about him teaching the kung fu or leaving China, or I don't know. I forgot what it was, but
it
yeah.
started with his father, I think.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah. No.
He, he
That
had
was really good. So funny. I think I have the DVD. I have to see if I can find it and put that in. It was really good. I remember watching it. I actually saw it with my mother. I saw that. So, nothing much with the Libra here. Um, obviously out in public, he was very creative and artistic with, just the style, right? Brandon Lee, like his father, was very he knew how to be marketable. You know what I mean? He was very like appealing. Like they seemed like there was a momentum getting behind him. And I don't know if you guys remember at the time, but I remember like The Crow was really hyped up. You know what I mean? Like it was like going to be like this, ooh, like this wild movie and this and that or whatever. And it was just very sad. I remember I used to watch Entertainment Tonight at the time, and they were like on the set behind the scenes of The Crow, you know. And I remember like, oh, okay, this, because I always like, kung fu and karate movies growing up. Now, but this is where I'm saying like that he could have been some sort of Reiki master or something, because the Neptune conjunct the midheaven in the 11th house, um, you know, groups and organizations, but just film, But he could also have some sort of so the midheaven is squaring the sun, and that's interesting too. It's not exact to the moon, I mean to the Neptune, but this makes me feel like it is weird, right? When you talk about that curse, it almost makes me feel like he was supposed to follow in his father's footsteps and do the kung fu and get into Hollywood, but that it would also be his end. Because you're having let's just say it's a loose square, but the sun and moon squaring the midheaven and Neptune, and when you think about organizations, well, the organization is the Screen Actors Guild, right? Being a part of Hollywood, SAG. And so, that's the only thing that I can think of. But this is clearly having a film career when you have the Neptune conjunct the midheaven. Now, he could have been a singer, a rapper, a poet, but he was, in film. So it's definitely Neptune is film and photography, so that's really fascinating. But that square definitely, grabs the attention and the midheaven and the moon. I wonder sometimes if the mother did not want him to follow in Bruce's footsteps. You know what I mean? Like maybe she knew better and she was concerned. I could see that being a thing. The Sagittarius South Node, so in the 12th house. So what happens is when you got Ketu, the dragon's tail, in Sagittarius and in the 12th house, this is where he would question China, question, his father's passing, right? Question, kung fu and film and this and that. Question religion, whether it's Christian or Buddhist or, whatever. He would, because the South Node in K2, it cuts, separates, and divides from the dogmatic organized religion. But this is the one that would say, well, why do we do the, Hail Marys, or why do we do, drinking of the blood and his body and start eating and this and that, right? Why do we read the Bible? Why do we go to church? Why do we go to mosque? It's going to question the validity of the organized religion. And the K2 really is the dragon's tail. It has no head, no direction. It wants to be more spiritual, but it doesn't know where it's going. And in the 12th house, it's already dissolving. So it's literally like, no, no, no. I want to be in the spiritual realm. Get me away from any organized religions. Okay. And he actually died in North Carolina. So when they were filming that, so I think that, this could in some way too separate him from wanting to be in or travel to foreign lands. Like maybe he did not want to go back and forth to America, to China, and just, be an American film star or something. It's very challenging when you have the Lilith on the ascendant, because just however you show up, people can, you could just walk into a room and be like, hello, and everybody's like, oh, get out of here. It's such a strong, palatable energy. Like it's that pheromones, hormones, that perfume. But he's somebody that it's looking at the seventh house. So it would be, that he would probably have an intuitive connection with Elizabeth, and two Aquariuses, that's, I don't know. Got to be pretty brave for that. So that's that's pretty cool. But obviously any two signs can work together. I'm kind of joking, but sometimes when the energy is so similar, it's just I don't know if any of you guys have ever dated your same sign. I know
Yes, it did not work.
it does. Yeah, it's very.
Yes, and me.
It feels so
Yep.
Didn't
weird.
work.
Yeah, it feels a little weird. You know what I mean? Maybe it could be a little okay, maybe just for the physical, but nothing emotional and nothing long lasting. At least, I that's what I experienced, but it's very, and then always, I think there's big differences with the same sign, in terms of the genders. Usually they play like different versions, of the same energy. It's obviously because men and women are so different, but it's just an interesting interesting thing to see. Now, when we start looking at the aspects, and let me know if you guys have any questions, but like I said, even this Saturn in Pisces, it's trining his midheaven. So there, right there, it's kind of like the legacy, karmic legacy of film and transformation, right? Like his skills, Pisces Saturn, that's the spiritual discipline to become this kung fu master like his father and be on film, trining this Scorpio midheaven. So he really, it's like he just had this like karmic support to be, now let me see if the Cancer, Nothing trining the Saturn in Cancer. I'm just looking for these other aspects. Now, this Gemini North Node at 21. Um, oh, his North Node is squaring. It's right in between the Pluto and the Mars. Wow. Okay, so you see that, like at his work and daily routine, the Gemini North Node, where he's communicating, acting, doing his, skills and his hands and his karate movement, and his work and daily routine is right in between the square of Mars and Pluto, which is
Hey,
like,
Eric,
yes.
would you be able to let me in?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
I've sent a request. Thanks.
Okay. But you see that, guys? That's kind of like that square, that's kind of showing the adversary, the the weapon, the transformation, the death and rebirth. That's kind of interesting that he did you get in? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting square, you know what I mean? Because oh, you got to hang up the phone, yeah. But any thoughts on that? Even the Saturn trine to midheaven or that Gemini North node squaring the Mars and Pluto.
So do you think maybe he was possibly removed because he followed so closely in his father's footsteps, and martial arts was hot at the time, so Jackie Chan kind of replaced him because he wasn't as deep?
I mean, it could easily be in a sense that what if, we know now how Hollywood is. What if Jackie was willing to play the game and Brandon wasn't?
Right,
You know what I mean? And
right.
so, you know, he was maybe getting a little too big and then what's weird, we don't know with these agencies, they take out insurance policies on the artists, whether it's the rappers, singers, actor, I assume they do it with actors too, the agencies and the labels, whether, I don't know, CAA or this one or that one. That's really interesting. I don't know, but think about Mars and Pluto, right? Mars is very much the weapon, the adversary, right? He was shot by a gun. Um, oh, let's look at this Jupiter. Is it squaring the? So Jupiter and Taurus at 16, um, in the fifth house.
And martial arts films typically don't have weapons. I mean, other than, guns and
Yeah,
stuff. They usually
no,
have
I
swords
know.
and their fists.
Well, that was the thing, right? They were trying to have the
Yeah.
weapon to like try to stop him, right? So that was like the bad guys having it. But, the way it just, I'm telling you, these mistakes they just don't really happen.
No.
Somebody wants it to happen.
Right.
Because there's so many protocols of checking things on film sets. Like it's really bizarre. Now, before it happened, I may have been like, "Oh, well, that's hard to fathom," or like, "Oh, yeah, well, that could happen." But after actually working on, multiple movie sets and doing my own, where we had a gun, you don't. It just, yeah, it shouldn't go down like so.
So when they use a gun, it's a real gun with a fake
And what
bullet
they
or
have in
something?
there is like the fake like pellets or fake bullets. It's
Hmm.
not, they don't have real
Okay.
bullets. And so usually there's not even, real bullets on the set. I mean, there's no reason.
Right,
I mean,
right,
just because you have a gun doesn't mean you need to have bullets around, you know.
right.
That gets you into the whole Chris Rock, right? We just got to raise the price of the bullets.
Right.
You don't ban guns, increase the price of the bullets. So I want to kill you, but I'll be back in 6 months. So but yeah, that really speaks to that, and that's kind of interesting. The Jupiter in Taurus is not square. Okay, so the Jupiter's kind of squaring the sun. Um, so Okay, there was something about his creativity and his expressing his artistic side from his heart. Fifth house can get into film and cinema, um, acting, but it's kind of squaring the Ceres and his son, and it's almost like the challenge to his vitality from doing his creative artistic work. You see that? Jupiter square, that's kind of interesting.
Mhm.
And Ceres, how you are nurtured and cared for. Yeah, that's see, and this is where Jupiter expands thing. And remember, the three most karmic signs, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Pisces, because they have co-rulers, right? Scorpio, Mars, Pluto, Aquarius, Saturn, Uranus, Pisces, Jupiter, Neptune. But this is paying off the karmic debt, you know? And I don't know if
And
go ahead, what were you gonna say?
um, the sun is ruled by the eighth house here, and that's a house of endings, and Jupiter is ruled by the 12th house, another house of ending.
Well, yeah, I mean, if that's what I'm saying, if you look at okay, those two, the Saturn Pisces, the square to the well, even the
Eighth house.
Neptune midheaven, the eighth house. No, no, I'm just throwing that in too, like all what you said, but then also the North Node square Mars. There's like four or five things here that are indicating karma, transition, death, rebirth. You know what I mean? So there's a lot. It's kind of like wild. Like, I mean, you don't normally see these type of challenging aspects in a natal chart, right? You see it in transit, but it almost appears, right, that like he was born to like kind of follow exactly in his father's footsteps and die the exact or similar way, right? Lose his vitality through his creative self-expression. Jupiter Taurus squaring the Aquarius Sun. Gemini North Node in the house of work and health, squaring to Mars and Pluto, right? Even the Jupiter opposing the midheaven Neptune film. Um,
And the
that's
fourth house isn't, wait, the fourth house?
fourth
The
house is
fourth house
Aries.
is the ending house too, and the um, Mars was part.
No, well, no, Mars is in the ninth, but the ruler, you're saying, yeah, the ruler of it. Um, You know, so I tend to, when we think about the individual's life, we're going to see more of the ending in the 12th house. The fourth will be the mother, the eighth, the father. But this south node here, Sagittarius, um, right, the ruler is Jupiter in the fifth. So it's like separating him from Scorpio, Sag, 12th house dissolving, and the ruler, Jupiter in the fifth, right? He was separated from the film industry and his creativity and self-expression. Remember, Taurus is very artistic. Everybody thinks of Gemini and Leo as like the artist or the actor or the creative person, but Taurus is too. It's just that they can also be very financially practical and prudent and pragmatic. So Taurus can be the banker, you know, they could work in real estate or farming or just different things. But Taurus can be the singer, the actress, the artist, the fashion designer, the DJ. Because Taurus is the five senses, but it's all things creative in that Venus realm. The Libra Venus realm is more law, aesthetics, relationships, event planning. Taurus is the physical things. We're getting into the crystals, the jewelry, the records, the hands, the wardrobe, you know, the painter, the artist. So, and not that Libras are any less creative. You know, they're really good at modeling, and, you know, acting, interior design, and stuff like that. But with Libras, you're getting into interrelational things, contracts, negotiations. That's why it's the wealthiest sun sign too. Libras are like the best listeners in the zodiac. You know, and that makes you a good listener too, with the Libra moon, you know, with the emotional mind.
I
Huh?
think better than the sun. For a
Yeah,
lot
Sag
of
Sun doesn't really want to listen to too many other people, but the
listen,
Libra Moon does. Sag Sun is like, listen, I'm on an adventure. Leave me alone. I'm doing
no,
this.
they like to talk more.
Yeah, but that Libra Moon is really nice. Um, the other thing that's interesting too, um, this South Node is squaring, right? It's kind of squaring to Pluto. So he's got a lot of squares, some trines, but a lot of squares.
Could be a curse carried down from a past life.
Yeah, well, he definitely, I don't know. Have you guys ever heard the theory that sometimes, and I haven't found a way to prove this, but so a lot of astrologers say, right, that your moon sign was your sun in a past life. The south node could have been like maybe your moon, because the south node of the moon could have been your moon in a past life, right? So he could have been an Aquarius sun in a past life with a Sag moon. But have you ever heard the descendant may have been your ascendant in a past life? I don't know if you ever heard that, but I've heard in some circles. I haven't tested it to know, and I guess we don't really get to talk to people that had remembered the past lives like that, but or any real proof. But so he could have been a Cancer rising. Neither, so I say all that to say, so that's kind of interesting when you look at that perspective, which would have put the Aquarius Sun in the eighth and the Sag Moon in the sixth. He definitely was gifted. Aquarius. He was highly intelligent. I mean, this Aquarius Sun and Moon, freaking brilliant. He was different. And think about that too, right? He kind of maybe in some ways didn't fit into any world, right? He wasn't Chinese enough, and he wasn't, Caucasian enough. And it's hard for anybody that's biracial, whether it's black, white, Asian, white, whatever it is, because sometimes you can feel ostracized or left out from either culture. Sometimes if, the healthy marriage relationship and the parents, then you can, get the diversity and the love from both sides, and that's great. But depending on the time period you were born, we're none of us are naive. We all realize that sometimes you can have a side that denies you or doesn't accept you, or you just feel a little peculiar and odd and detached. Aquarius Sun and Moon detached from both worlds, and it's in the second house of family. So I think in some ways he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps, because when you lose your father that young at age, and I can speak to this directly, everything you do is honoring the dad. Like because you're looking for that role model that's not in the physical plane anymore to approve. So you move and you do things for a higher, you know what I mean? So I used to always be like, well, when I was doing whatever, I was like, God's watching me and my dad's watching me. So it was like I was always performing for them. I didn't care what anybody else thought about it. You know what I mean? Even at a very young age. And I could see that with Brandon. There was, I mean, because let's be honest, he could have been like, I'm gonna do something else. He followed exactly in the footsteps, but it's almost like he knew he had to, right? All this karma in here, right? With the Aquarius, square to the Jupiter, the Aquarius Sun squaring the midheaven, conjunct the Neptune, the Gemini North Node squaring the Mars Pluto. It was like he had to do it. Like he had to become the Kung Fu. Now, he did the 8 films, and the first one started up here at 21. So, from 21, he basically did, like a movie or so, most every year, right? Because you're going from Libra to Aries is, 7 years, right? And this would be eighth, The Crow, which, came out, right after he, died, and I think in 94, and he died in 93. But that's pretty wild. But I just thought it was interesting because this Chiron, you know, with it being 16, but you could round up to 17 degrees, which means you could round up to 8 years old. And, he died when his father was 8. That's definitely the Chiron moon, you know. And in some way, he could have been very spiritually tuned in as a little boy. And, we don't know. Like sometimes kids say, Daddy, Daddy, don't go again. Don't leave. He's like, oh, I got to go do this movie, do some voiceovers. Don't worry, Brandon. I'll be back home in like 3 weeks. Daddy will be home at the end of the month. Daddy, don't leave. You know what I mean? Like he could have had these little spidey hit senses, especially when you're dealing with Chiron and Saturn and Pisces. It's, I like when Anjani, it made me think of like a kung fu artist, right? When Anjani described the knife cutting through the water, the ocean, Saturn, Pisces. Well, actually, she used that for Mars, but, Saturn and Pisces, when you think about the dissolving rings, but just that discipline, right? It needs boundaries, you know? Now, I don't know what could have, come about. This Saturn and Pisces makes me think about his discipline to become the kung fu artist so that he could become the actor and follow in his dad's footsteps. Saturn Pisces was that, right? His kicks, the feet, the legs, his skills, self efforts. So you could see with this placement, Brandon was like training every day. He was like, this is, he was like, I'm going to be like that. I'm going to be like that. I'm going to be like that. So it was like that prophecy, he kind of fulfilled it. Um, which which is pretty sad, you know. Um, Now where is that Venus? Ah, there we go. The Venus on the ascendant. So, having the Venus and the Mercury on the ascendant, right? He was the messenger, the part of fortune. The money came from him, his physical appearance out of mass. Now, she was an Aquarius, but she may have had Capricorn placements. His Juno's here and Lilith in Capricorn, right? Chances are, if she was an Aquarius, just like Brandon, she could have had placements in Cap. But even the Venus Cap, we don't know if her Venus was there, but the Mercury. So Venus Cap, he was about his business, you know. He, he was starting off pretty young, 21. And by 28, he was, doing his eighth film. He's about to get married. He was well on his way. Venus Capricorn. Now, with Mercury Capricorn, he may have he may have said to them, "No, I'm Brandon Lee. I don't have to do it your way, right?" In terms of, maybe, to bring in the other guy, Jackie Chan, maybe he didn't, want to sacrifice somebody, or, I'm not sacrificing my mother and my sister. I'm not sleeping with, this executive. I'm not doing this. We just don't know, I mean, we are not naive, so we know that this perversion and all this stuff in Hollywood surely didn't start in, since 2000. It was going on 40s, 50s, 30s, this is Marilyn Monroe, all the stars, you know what I mean? So, whether if it was just a regular casting couch on top of, the selling of the soul and different things and different demonic things. But this is where you could see with the part of fortune, Lilith, Mercury, Venus on the ascendant in Capricorn, that, he may have wanted to honor, be devoted. Venus is your devotion, Capricorn, to his father's legacy. Now remember, the South Node, Sagittarius, Bruce was Sag, Sun, and Rising. South Node, if you laid the chart, so he'd be separated from his father. That's crazy. You know, that's really wild. It makes me wonder, was Brandon like, could he have been like Bruce's grandfather in a past life or something, or something like that? Like, not every time, I don't believe, I don't know, but I don't believe that, all the time you reincarnate in your own lineage and your own family. That could have been something where, you know, he, was a grandfather of Bruce or great grandfather and decided to come back as the son.
Maybe
Another
to
reason why
finish up,
say it again.
finish up, maybe to finish up whatever the grandfather didn't accomplish.
Yeah, but what's so interesting is that even when Evelyn brought up that whole curse thing,
Or
it's
clean it up.
weird. No, no, it's just weird in the sense that you feel as if he was on the verge of getting married and then having his own child, but the lineage was cut off, right? So he was like the last Lee. I mean, obviously Bruce had a
Right.
brothers, so there are probably more Lees, but like from Bruce, Brandon, the daughter, unless she just kept her name, I don't know, but you know what I'm saying? Like, so it would be the end of the Lee lineage from Bruce, and that's where I wonder. It's like. You know how I tell you, like, they know our charts, they see our charts, right? And it's like, it's almost like we got to get him before he procreates. So, like, I don't know. I'm just being a silly conspiracy.
Don't leave anything out. You know they're
No, listen. I don't mind pontificating and assuming just because it's 2026. How could we not fathom anything, right?
right,
I
right.
mean, Bigfoot could just walk outside my house next to a elf, a fairy, and a mermaid, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's regular Friday. Like at this point in time, nothing surprises me anymore, you guys. I don't know if you guys heard that dolphin story in Florida. That's like wild. That guy that he built the underwater city, and the dolphins took him.
Oh, I heard that yesterday.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, but when they tested him, he had sea
Yeah,
algae in his lungs.
right.
You know what I'm saying? And they tested him for drugs and alcohol, and he had none. So, I mean, yo,
That's
that's wild. I
bizarre.
don't know. Listen, I know dolphins are no joke. I know that, but so, I think overall with Brandon, we have to say that, he was going to be someone who was extremely talented, way beyond what we got to see. He was very artistic. He would have had the Saturn tells me, with his discipline, he would have had a long film career, you know. Um, the wife would have kind of maybe been the boss of the house, but most wives are, right? But she would have managed the money. Um, with the moon in the second house, family earnings, money in the seventh, and the sun in the eighth. He may have had some issues with her in-law, like his in-laws, but they're and then Jupiter Taurus fifth house. They were gonna have a bunch of kids.
Well, they cut that off right
That's what
away.
I'm saying. Like this chart tells
Wow.
you, when you look at this chart, it's like, yeah, he could have like two, three kids.
Mm.
But the square to the sun, Jupiter expands, right? And this is where I said Jupiter could be a part of death, right? That's square to the sun. Jupiter could be expanding the detachment or the separation or the loss of your health and vitality. Sun, moon, Jupiter. So by doing your creative self-expression, oh, wait a minute. And I guess it's a with the midheaven. Hold on now. Wait a minute now. Wait a minute. Oh yeah, it's a fixed T square because we have Jupiter, Sun, and Neptune. So that dissolving. So look at that. The Jupiter is expanding the Neptune and he's creating and working on the film set. And the T square, they point to the sun and it's dissolving in an expansive way his vitality while he's earning money. Holy crap, look at that. It's right there. And the moon is his body and health. And this is his speech. So he was acting. You see that? Jupiter, Neptune, Sun. Wow. Brandon Lee. Another one going too soon, you know? Now, what'd be interesting is to see, like what were the transits going on at that year or whatever, you know what I mean? Because that would definitely explain a lot in terms of, you know, his his health and stuff like that. You know what? Let's have a little bit of fun real quick and let's just move it forward, um, and see what was happening at age 28, because this is where we can get into the juice. So February 1st, hey Siri, what's 28 days from February 1st, 1965?
Monday, March 1st, 1965.
All right, Monday, March 1st. So now we're going to see how Brandon was when he died. Okay. Brandon Lee, age 28. Okie dokies. We are now the Aquarius rising. Okay. The Pisces sun in the second house. Okay. The Jupiter is in the fourth.
Are
The,
these
the,
correct?
say it again.
These are the transits of the time?
No, so this is his secondary progression chart. So how his soul was vibrating at age 28. And
Okay.
Aquarius, oddly enough, look, because every 27 years you have your moon return in a progress chart. So the moon was back in Aquarius,
Mhm.
right? Aquarius rising, but his sun now is in Pisces. Film, part of fortune for his speech, discipline, Venus. Okay. Mercury is Chiron. We'll see if there's anything, nothing really in the fifth house except for the, so now we got the North Node in the fifth house. And look at this. I told you the eighth house, we could see the transformation of the end of life in the 12th house. So in the secondary progression chart, right, he's dealing with the Juno and Lilith here in the 12th house, hidden enemies. Capricorn Lilith. So maybe the film business was the hidden enemy, even though he was married to it. And then South
So
Node conjunct the midheaven,
the
right?
first is what, Eric? What was the
The
first?
first house?
March 1st?
Oh,
No,
March
March 1st.
1st, 28 days after his birth. That's how you calculate your
Okay.
progress chart.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Because he
And
died on the 31st.
yes, he died, was it July or June?
March. No,
March, yeah.
March.
March, yeah. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this would have taken him 28 days after your birth. And but look at that eighth house now. Mars, Pluto, Uranus there. Now this is secret societies. This is where we could see different, the maybe some adversaries. That Lilith, let's see if it at 11 degrees, okay, and Cap. Is it squaring anything? Cap Libra, no. And Cap Aries, no. So, okay. I just wanted to see, but it is trining um, the Jupiter. No, it's too far away, but it is trining the Uranus. Uranus is sudden events, okay, and it's trining the Pluto, transformation, death, and rebirth, and it's an eighth house, so other people's resources. It wasn't like he got married and then the wife was like to be questioned, something nefarious, so she didn't get any money because they weren't married. So, that we can't throw her in
Maybe
the
the movie
mix.
studios got the money because they had insurance on them.
That's what I bet they did. I bet they did. Um, yeah, I'm probably sure they did. This is wild though. But so this is just interesting. But look, and then you got the Neptune in the 10th house now, right? Phil, right? So, it's interesting how the midheaven still stayed on the 11th. Hmm. I wish that's the one thing I don't know. What is it except for the longitude and latitude that makes the midheaven bounce from 9, 10, or 11. Or, I told you I've only one time seen it in the eighth house, and I had a client in Scotland. And then if someone's really close to the equator, it could be in the 12th house. But I've only seen, well, now I've seen 8, but 8, 9, 10, and 11, I've never seen in the 12th house. But I've heard that it is possible, but I've never seen it. So I don't know what that longitude and latitude would be. But it's just interesting, this Mars, Pluto, Uranus. And remember, with secondary progressions, it doesn't nullify the birth chart, you guys. It's speaking to how your soul is vibrating at that current age. So it's almost like laying on top of the natal chart. So it's good to look at. And it's something that you could check in your own chart every 2, 3 years, or even get a secondary progression reading, especially if you know your ascendant and sun have switched, because it's a whole different vibration. Like now I'm a Cap rising and a Scorpio sun. That's totally different from Virgo Scorpio. So, those are things to, consider in terms of doing secondary progression charts. But this is definitely interesting. And the moon on the ascendant, right? His vitality, physical appearance, outer mask, the Aquarius moon detached. So that's kind of interesting. Oh, wait a minute. Look at that. That's squaring the Jupiter in the 4th house? Moon square Jupiter. Huh. So maybe it separated him from having the family in his own home, the big family. The moon is your body, health, intuition, your family you create, and your mother, squaring Jupiter in the 4th house. So in his homeland, being creative using his speech, it was, in disagreement and challenging to his body, family, emotional mind. Aquarius moon detached. I mean, that wouldn't speak to that, but that's the only negative thing that I really see. I don't know if the Aquarius moon is up. Well, I guess we got, okay, look, so remember last time we had Jupiter, Sun, Neptune? So look, now we got Jupiter, Neptune, Moon in the progress chart. Oh, so that Moon square Neptune, now that's different. Because what's the Neptune in the 10th house is workplace, working on the film set. That's literal, squaring the moon. And Neptune, the deception dissolved his body with somebody pum-pumed, right? That's wild. Oh, and the Mars is kind of quincunx the moon. So, Brandon definitely was, God, do you think Bruce, I guess, do you remember in the movie, did they say like, was Bruce, I don't remember, was he concerned about that with Brandon? Or did he even know?
But the
The curse.
he was trying to protect them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
It was happening in his dreams.
yeah.
Yeah, and then he started to it kind of materialized later on while he was doing while he was filming. He would black out and just fall into these, this thing.
Oh yeah, he passed out on set, right?
Yeah.
I remember that now.
Didn't realize, and while he was passed out, he was fighting that demon.
Wow. Huh. It makes you wonder in Brandon's natal chart, was it that Mars, Pluto, Uranus, because that's the house of your father's teachings and your guru? Remember I said that the Mars they were showed that the father would have bruises, cuts, the fighting and all that. And so Brandon, that's what he learned from his dad. He learned the film, but he learned the fight. you know. So, well, Mr. Brandon Lee. Man, that's definitely interesting. You know, but one thing I will say, whether it's, you know, for Brandon Lee or for Bruce Lee, we definitely could see the gifts, the skills, and the talent. And I think with Brandon Lee, there was a lot of karma for him to fall and, you know, to follow his father's footsteps. But we saw multiple things, even in the progress chart and the natal chart, that really showed the dissolving, right? Remember, the sun is your vitality, your I am, your purpose, even identity, career. So it was like the dissolving, like of his life, you know. So, well, that's Mr. Brandon Lee. Now, so, all right, guys, enjoy the weekend. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too.
All
You too.
All
Enjoy
right.
your weekend,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
right, good night, all.
Good night. Bye, you guys.